The penthouse suite on the 68th floor of Manhattan's most exclusive residential tower had everything money could buy: Italian marble floors that gleamed like frozen lakes, floor-to-ceiling windows offering breathtaking views of Central Park, custom furniture designed by artists whose names most people couldn't pronounce, and original paintings worth more than most people would earn in 10 lifetimes. Yet for all its opulence, the space felt as cold and lifeless as a mausoleum. Marcus Ashford lay in the hospital bed that had been installed in what was once his master bedroom, staring at the ceiling he'd stopped seeing weeks ago. At 33 years old, he should have been in the prime of his life. Instead, he was dying. The aggressive form of leukemia had ravaged his body with shocking speed, turning the once vibrant tech mogul into a shadow of himself. His 6'2" frame had withered to barely 140 pounds, his olive skin had taken on a grayish pallor, and his dark eyes, once described by Forbes as piercing and visionary, now held only exhaustion and resignation. The irony wasn't lost on him. He'd built a social media empire worth $12 billion connecting people across the globe, yet he was dying utterly alone. His phone, still within reach on the nightstand out of habit, rarely rang anymore. The board had pushed him out with sympathetic faces and firm handshakes. His so-called friends had gradually stopped visiting, their discomfort with mortality outweighing whatever affection they'd claimed to have. His parents had been dead since he was 19. The car accident that made him an orphan had also been the catalyst for his driven, almost obsessive climb to success. There had been women, of course. Lots of them. Models, actresses, fellow entrepreneurs. But Marcus had never let anyone get close enough to matter. Love was a distraction, he'd always thought. Commitment was a liability in the fast-paced world of tech startups and corporate takeovers. Now, with death approaching on silent feet, he understood the true cost of his philosophy. He was about to die as he had lived alone. The hospice nurse, a kind woman named Patricia, who came 3 times a week, had gently suggested he might want to get his affairs in order and perhaps reach out to loved ones. Marcus had almost laughed. What loved ones? The lawyers handling his estate had instructions to donate most of his fortune to various charities. It seemed like the thing to do, though he felt nothing about it. He felt nothing about much of anything anymore. The days blurred together in a haze of pain medication and fitful sleep. Sometimes he wasn't sure if he was awake or dreaming. The apartment was maintained by a small staff who came and went like ghosts, a rotating cast of nurses, a physical therapist who'd stopped coming when Marcus stopped trying, and the housekeeping service that sent someone 3 times a week to keep the place from falling into chaos. It was a Tuesday morning when everything changed, though Marcus didn't know it yet. He was drifting in that gray space between sleep and waking, half aware of voices in the hallway. The regular housekeeper had quit, something about taking a job closer to her family in New Jersey, and the agency had sent a replacement. Rosa Martinez stood in the kitchen, trying not to let her anxiety show as the building's concierge explained Mr. Ashford's situation. She was 28, with warm brown eyes, dark hair pulled back in a practical ponytail, and the kind of quiet strength that came from surviving things that would have broken lesser people. She'd emigrated from Honduras 5 years ago, working brutal hours at multiple cleaning jobs to send money home to her mother and younger siblings. 6 months ago, she'd finally saved enough to bring her 3-year-old daughter, Lily, to New York. "He's very sick," the concierge said, his voice low and somewhat reverent, as if discussing a dying king. "Terminal. The agency said you were okay with that." Rosa nodded. She'd cleaned homes of the elderly and infirm before. Death didn't frighten her. She'd held her grandmother's hand as the old woman slipped away, and she understood that caring for the dying was sacred work. "I understand. I'll be respectful." He mostly stays in his room. "Just do your job and don't disturb him." He values his privacy. What the concierge really meant, Rosa understood, was that Marcus Ashford wanted to die without witnesses to his deterioration, without anyone seeing how the mighty had fallen. "There's just one thing," Rosa said, her accent giving a musical quality to her English. "The agency knows, but I need to tell you too. My regular sitter is sick this week. I had to bring my daughter. She'll stay in the kitchen, very quiet. She has her coloring books and toys. She won't be any trouble." The concierge frowned, clearly uncomfortable, but he'd been told the apartment needed to be maintained regardless.
"Fine.
"But keep her out of Mr. Ashford's way." "He doesn't. He isn't used to children." Rosa took the service elevator up with Lily's small hand clasped in hers. The little girl was tiny for 3, with her mother's dark eyes and a wild mass of curls that Rosa could never quite tame. She was wearing her favorite dress, a hand-me-down with faded butterflies on it, and clutching a worn stuffed rabbit. "Remember me, amor," Rosa said as they rode up. "You must be very quiet today. There's a sick man here who needs to rest." "Okay, Mommy," Lily whispered, her eyes wide and solemn. She was a good child, perhaps too good for someone so young. She'd learned early that her mother worked hard and that being well-behaved made things easier. The apartment took Rosa's breath away when they entered. She'd cleaned expensive homes before, but nothing like this. It was less a home than a monument to wealth and success. And yet, as she moved through the pristine rooms with Lily trailing behind her like a quiet shadow, Rosa felt a profound sadness seeping from the walls. This place had everything except what mattered most. It had never been loved. She settled Lily in the kitchen with her coloring books and a snack, then began her work, moving efficiently through the living spaces, careful not to disturb the silence that hung over the apartment like a shroud. Once, she passed the master bedroom and heard ragged breathing, saw through the partially open door the wasted figure in the hospital bed. Her heart clenched with pity. So young to be so sick, so rich to be so alone. As she worked, Rosa prayed quietly for the man dying in the other room, for her daughter's future, for the strength to do what needed to be done. She didn't know that in just a few hours, her prayers would be answered in ways she never could have imagined. Marcus was awake, but wished he weren't. The pain medication made him fuzzy without actually stopping the pain. It just made him care about it less, which wasn't the same thing at all. He could hear someone moving around in the apartment, the new housekeeper probably. He didn't care enough to wonder about her. She was just another faceless person paid to maintain the shell of a life he no longer lived. He closed his eyes, searching for the nowhere place where sleep might take him, when he heard it, the sound that didn't belong in his silent, dying world. A child's voice, barely above a whisper, singing softly. The tune was familiar, something about twinkle stars, but the words were in Spanish. Marcus's eyes opened. There was a child in his apartment. His first emotion was irritation. He'd specifically told the agency no one with children, but before the anger could fully form, something else happened. The bedroom door, which the nurse must have left ajar, swung open wider, and a tiny figure appeared in the doorway. She was so small that Marcus's brain initially couldn't process what he was seeing. A little girl, maybe 3 years old, wearing a faded dress with butterflies on it. She had an enormous mass of dark curls that seemed almost bigger than her small frame, and she was clutching a bedraggled stuffed rabbit. Her eyes, enormous and dark brown, fixed on him with a kind of direct, unafraid stare that only small children possess. For a long moment, neither of them moved. Marcus had virtually no experience with children. They were from a different world, one he'd never expected to inhabit. He opened his mouth to call for the housekeeper, to have this child removed, but something stopped him. The little girl tilted her head, studying him with that unnerving intensity. Then, instead of running away or crying, which is what Marcus assumed children did when confronted with his skeletal appearance, she walked right into the room. "You're sick," she announced in a small, serious voice. It wasn't a question. Marcus stared at her. "Yes," he finally managed, his voice hoarse from disuse. She nodded, as if this confirmed something she'd already known. Then, with the kind of logic only a toddler could possess, she walked to the side of his bed and, with considerable effort, climbed onto the chair the nurses used. This brought her almost to eye level with him. "My abuela was sick," she said, holding her rabbit close. "She went to heaven with the angels." "I'm sorry," Marcus said automatically, though he wasn't sure why he was apologizing or even why he was having this conversation. "It's okay," the little girl said with the philosophical acceptance of a child who'd been told something was okay enough times to believe it. "Mommy says she watches over us now. She's my guardian angel." There was a beat of silence, then the girl asked, "Are you going to heaven too?" The directness of the question hit Marcus like a physical blow. Adults danced around his dying with euphemisms and careful language. This child simply asked the truth. I don't know," he admitted. She considered this seriously, then reached out with one tiny hand and patted his arm with the gentleness of someone who understood that he was fragile. The gesture was so unexpected, so purely kind, that Marcus felt something crack in his chest, some wall he'd built up over weeks of dying alone. "What's your name?" he asked, surprising himself with the question. "Lily Rosa Martinez," she said proudly, clearly having practiced introducing herself. "I'm 3. What's your name?" "Marcus." "That's a good name," she said approvingly. Then, "Are you lonely?" Another direct hit to the heart. "Yes," Marcus whispered, admitting for the first time what he'd barely admitted to himself. "Very lonely." Lily nodded as if this made perfect sense. Then she did something that would later seem to Marcus like a miracle in its simplicity. She scooted the chair closer, climbed partially onto the bed, moving with a careful slowness that suggested someone had taught her to be gentle around sick people, and sat next to him. Not touching but close. Present. "I'll stay with you," she announced. "So, you're not lonely anymore." And just like that, with a 3-year-old's absolute conviction, she opened her coloring book on the bed and began to draw, her tongue poking out slightly in concentration, occasionally glancing at Marcus as if to make sure he was still there, as if her presence was a gift she was consciously giving. Marcus lay there, stunned. He should send her away. He should call for her mother. Instead, he watched her color, watched her small hands carefully staying inside the lines of a picture of a garden, watched her occasionally hold up the rabbit to show it her work. "That's Mr. Hoppy," she explained, noticing his gaze. "He's very old. Mommy got him at a church sale. He's the best rabbit in the whole world." "I can see that," Marcus said, and was rewarded with a smile so bright it seemed to illuminate the dim room. Rosa discovered them 20 minutes later. She'd been in the apartment's library, dusting the shelves of books that clearly had never been read, when she suddenly realized she couldn't hear Lily in the kitchen. Panic had flooded through her. Lily was always obedient, but she was also 3 and curious, and this apartment was enormous. She rushed through the rooms, calling her daughter's name in an urgent whisper, her heart pounding. When she reached the master bedroom and saw through the open door what had happened, she froze. Lily was sitting on the dying billionaire's bed, chattering away about her coloring book, showing him a picture of a butterfly she'd just completed. And Marcus Ashford, the man who supposedly wanted absolute privacy, who everyone said was too ill for visitors, was listening. Actually listening, his gaunt face turned toward her daughter with an expression Rosa couldn't quite read. Pain, yes, but also something that looked almost like wonder. "Lily," Rosa gasped, rushing forward. I'm so sorry, Mr. Ashford. I'm so sorry. She was supposed to stay in the kitchen. Lily, come here right now. But Lily looked at her mother with confusion. But Mommy, Marcus is lonely. I'm keeping him company. That's what Abuel said. When people are lonely, we should stay with them. Rosa reached the bed, ready to scoop her daughter up and flee, probably losing this desperately needed job in the process. But before she could grab Lily, Marcus spoke, his voice weak but clear. It's okay, he said, and when Rosa looked at him in surprise, she saw tears tracking down his hollow cheeks. She's not bothering me. She's the first person in months who hasn't looked at me like I'm already dead. The raw honesty in his voice stopped Rosa cold. She looked at this man, this dying stranger who had more money than she could imagine, and saw something she recognized. She saw someone who was suffering in ways that had nothing to do with physical illness. I'm Rosa, she said softly, her anger dissolving into compassion. Lily's mother. I work for the cleaning agency. I know, Marcus said. I mean, I didn't know, but I figured. He managed a weak smile. Your daughter is very forthright. She learned from my mother, Rosa said, moving closer but keeping a respectful distance. My mother believed in speaking truth with love. She had no patience for pretending. She sounds like she was a good person. The best, Rosa said, her eyes misting. She's the reason I'm here, in this country. She wanted better for Lily. She made me promise I'd give my baby opportunities she never had. Lily, sensing the adult conversation had shifted to serious matters, returned to her coloring, but she leaned slightly against Marcus's arm, a small anchor of presence. Marcus looked at the child next to him, then at her mother. How often are you scheduled to come? 3 times a week, Rosa said hesitantly. Monday, Wednesday, Friday. But if you want someone else, I understand. I shouldn't have brought her. My sitter was sick, and I couldn't afford to lose the work. No, Marcus said quickly. I mean, could you bring her? When you come, could Lily come too? Rosa stared at him in surprise. You want her to come? I don't want to impose, Marcus said, suddenly uncertain. But she's the first person in months who's treated me like I'm still human. Everyone else looks at me and sees a dying man. She just sees someone who's lonely. He paused, struggling with words. I'm going to die soon. I've accepted that. But before I do, I'd like to not feel quite so alone. Rosa felt tears welling in her eyes. In that moment, she understood something profound. She'd walked into this apartment thinking she would be cleaning it, but what this man really needed wasn't someone to maintain his possessions. He needed someone to see him. We'll come, she said quietly. Both of us. And Marcus? You don't have to die alone. Not anymore. Lily looked up from her coloring book. Can I come back on Monday? I want to show you when I finish this whole book. I'd like that very much, Marcus said, and for the first time in longer than he could remember, he felt something that wasn't pain or resignation. He felt hope. The weekend crawled by for Marcus with an unfamiliar sensation, anticipation. For months, each day had been identical, a slow march toward an inevitable end. Now, he found himself watching the clock, waiting for Monday morning. It was absurd, he told himself. A 3-year-old child and her housekeeper mother. What difference could they possibly make? Yet, he couldn't stop thinking about Lily's small hand patting his arm, the weight of her presence sitting beside his bed, the way she looked at him without pity or fear, just acceptance. Patricia, the hospice nurse, noticed something different during her Sunday visit. You seem more alert today, she observed, adjusting his foreline. Are you in less pain? Maybe a little, Marcus admitted, though he wasn't sure if the pain had actually decreased or if he simply had something besides it to focus on. "Well, whatever you're doing, keep it up," Patricia said with an encouraging smile. "Sometimes the best medicine isn't in a bottle." Monday morning arrived with rare sunshine streaming through the penthouse windows. Marcus had asked the night nurse to help him sit up properly, to put on a clean t-shirt instead of the hospital gown he'd been living in. The nurse had been so surprised by the request that she'd nearly dropped the water pitcher she was holding. When Rosa and Lily arrived, the little girl burst into the bedroom like a small tornado of energy, dragging her mother behind her. She'd added several stickers to Mr. Hoppy since Friday, sparkly stars and rainbow hearts, and she couldn't wait to show Marcus her completed coloring pages. "Look," she exclaimed, climbing onto her now customary chair. "I finished the whole garden, and I stayed inside all the lines. Mommy says I'm getting really good." Marcus studied the pages with genuine interest. "These are beautiful, Lily. You're a talented artist." The little girl beamed, then pulled out a fresh page. "Today I'm going to color this one. It's a castle. Do you think castles should be pink or purple?" "Why not both?" Marcus suggested. Lily's eyes widened as if he'd just revealed the secrets of the universe. "Both. That's perfect." She immediately set to work, narrating her artistic choices. "The towers will be purple because purple is royal, and the walls will be pink because pink is happy." Rosa watched from the doorway, her heart full. She'd been worried after Friday, afraid that Marcus might have changed his mind, that he'd realize having a noisy toddler in his space was too much. Instead, he looked more alive than he had on Friday, still terribly ill, still dying, but somehow more present, more here. "Would you like me to start cleaning?" she asked quietly. "Actually," Marcus said, surprising himself with his boldness, "could you stay? Just for a bit? Lily's told me about her coloring and her rabbit, but I don't know much else about her. About either of you." Rosa hesitated, then pulled another chair closer. This wasn't what she'd been hired to do, but something in Marcus's expression told her it was what he needed. "What would you like to know?" Over the next hour, while Lily colored and occasionally interjected with important 3-year-old observations, Rosa told Marcus their story. She spoke of Honduras, of coffee plantations and mountain villages, of a teenage pregnancy that had marked her as ruined in her small town. She told him about Lily's father, a boy who'd fled when he learned about the baby, and her mother who'd stood by her when everyone else turned away. "My mother worked herself sick," Rosa said softly. "Literally. She cleaned houses, took in washing, did anything to help me save money to come here. She wanted Lily to grow up with opportunities, to go to school, to become whatever she wanted. She died 3 months before I'd saved enough. Her last words to me were, 'Go. Give our Lily the world.'" "That's a heavy promise to keep," Marcus said. "It's the only promise that matters," Rosa replied, watching her daughter contentedly coloring. "I work 3 jobs now. Cleaning services during the day, a restaurant 4 nights a week, and weekend laundry service for a hotel. It's hard, but when I see Lily learning her letters, speaking English so well, dreaming about being a doctor or a teacher, or," she smiled, "last week, an astronaut princess, I know it's worth it." "An astronaut princess?" Marcus couldn't help but smile. "Someone has to rule the moon," Lily interjected seriously, not looking up from her castle. "The moon people need a princess too." Marcus laughed. Actually laughed, a sound he hadn't made in so long it felt foreign in his throat. "You're absolutely right. That's a very important job." As the morning progressed, something shifted in the room. Rosa cleaned, but she also talked. She told Marcus about her church, about the community of immigrants who looked out for each other, about the small apartment she shared with 2 other families, about Lily's preschool program at the community center. In turn, Marcus found himself talking about things he'd never discussed with anyone. He told them about growing up privileged but alone, about parents who'd loved him but who'd been more interested in their social calendar than their son. He talked about the car accident that killed them when he was 19, about throwing himself into building his company to avoid feeling the grief. "I thought success would fill the emptiness," he admitted. "I built an empire of connection, but never connected with anyone myself. Every relationship was strategic. Every friendship was networking. I told myself it was worth it, that I was changing the world. But now, at the end, I realize I never actually lived in the world I was changing." "It's not the end yet," Rosa said gently. "You're still here. You still have time." "Time for what?" "I'm dying." "Time to feel," Rosa said simply. "Time to connect. Time to matter to someone. My mother used to say that we're not measured by our achievements, but by our impact on hearts. You have more money than I can imagine, Marcus, but Lily will remember you not because you're rich, but because you listened to her talk about her coloring book. Because you made her feel important." Marcus felt tears welling up again. He'd cried more in the past 3 days than in the previous 30 years. "I've wasted so much time." "Then don't waste what you have left," Rosa said firmly. "Use it, not to build more things or make more money, but to be present, to be human." Lily suddenly climbed onto the bed. She'd become increasingly comfortable with Marcus and patted his hand. "Don't be sad," she said. "Sad makes your heart hurt. Mommy says when we're sad, we should think of 3 good things." "3 good things?" Marcus asked. "3 good things," Lily confirmed. "I'll go first. 1. Mr. Hoppy. 2. Mommy's arroz con leche. 3. You. You're my friend now, so you're a good thing." The simplicity of it broke Marcus. This child, who had every reason to be bitter about life, growing up in poverty, losing her grandmother, living in a cramped apartment with her single mother working herself to exhaustion, could still find joy in a stuffed rabbit, rice pudding, and a dying stranger. "Okay," he said thickly. 3 good things. 1. Sunshine through the window. 2. Purple and pink castles. 3. Both of you. You came into my life when I'd given up on people, and you've given me something I thought I'd lost. You've given me hope." Rosa reached out and squeezed his hand, careful of the 4-line. "Then we'll keep coming. We'll be here as long as you need us." "I can come every day," Lily announced. "I have lots of coloring books." Marcus smiled through his tears. "I'd like that very much." As the weeks progressed, a routine developed. Rosa and Lily came Monday, Wednesday, and Friday officially, but Rosa started bringing Lily on her other days off too. Marcus insisted on paying her for the time, but Rosa refused. "You're giving us something too," she explained. "You listen to Lily like her stories matter. You ask me about my day like my life is interesting. You really see us as people who matter. That's not something you can pay for." Marcus began to look forward to their visits with an intensity that surprised him. He had the nurse help him sit up on visiting days. He started eating a little more, wanting to have enough energy to stay awake for their entire visit. He even had his assistant, one of the few people who still returned his calls, order art supplies, proper coloring books, good markers, stickers, and for Lily's upcoming birthday, a beautiful set of watercolors. Lily brought light into his dying world. She'd curl up beside him with her coloring books, chattering about her day at the community center preschool, about her friend Carlos who could count to 100 in English and Spanish, about the stray cat she'd named Whiskers who lived behind their building. One afternoon she asked him, "Marcus, what did you do before you got sick?" "I built a company," he said. "A website where people could share photos and messages with friends. Like when Mommy sends pictures to Tia Carmen in Honduras? Exactly like that." "That's good," Lily nodded approvingly. Tia Carmen loves our pictures. She says they make her happy when she's lonely. You helped people not be lonely. Marcus had never thought of it that way. He'd thought about user engagement, market penetration, shareholder value. But Lily, with a child's clarity, had identified the actual human purpose of what he'd built. You're right, he said softly. I did. I just forgot that along the way. That's okay, Lily assured him. Mommy says we all forget important things sometimes. That's why we have to remind each other. And so they did. Rosa and Lily reminded Marcus how to be human. They reminded him that wealth meant nothing compared to connection, that success was meaningless without purpose, that even at the end, life could still hold beauty and meaning. In return, Marcus gave them what he'd never given anyone, his authentic self. Not the billionaire, not the CEO, just Marcus. A lonely man learning how to let people in. The shift happened gradually, so subtly that Marcus didn't notice until he was already transformed. It started with small things, asking Rosa about her day, and actually listening to the answer, requesting that Lily bring photos from her preschool so he could see her art projects displayed on the classroom wall, remembering details about their lives and following up on them. How did Carlos do on his numbers test? He'd ask Lily. Did the stray cat come back? He'd inquire. Were you able to send money to your sister this month? He'd check with Rosa. These tiny threads of genuine interest wove themselves into something larger, actual relationships, real connections. For the first time in his adult life, Marcus cared about someone other than himself, and that care gave him a purpose beyond mere survival. One Wednesday afternoon, about 5 weeks after their first meeting, Rosa arrived to find Marcus agitated, his thin fingers gripping his phone with surprising intensity. Lily immediately noticed his distress and climbed onto her chair, her small face creased with concern. What's wrong? The little girl asked, her hand finding his arm in that gentle gesture that had become their language. Marcus set down his phone, looking between Rosa and Lily. My lawyer called. The final will is ready to sign. It just made everything feel so final, real. Rosa set down her cleaning supplies and pulled up a chair. Can I ask what you decided to do? You don't have to tell me if it's private. No, I want to tell you, Marcus said. He'd been thinking about this constantly, especially after Rosa had shared her story about her mother's sacrifice. I'm giving most of it away to hospitals, research facilities, children's charities. But I realized something. I have all this money, and I've been thinking about it like a monument, like it needs to go to some grand cause with my name on it. But that's just ego. That's me trying to buy immortality. That doesn't sound like ego, Rosa said gently. Those are good causes. They are, Marcus agreed. But they're also safe. Impersonal. The money will help people I'll never know, fix problems I've never understood. And that's fine, but it's not enough. Not anymore. He looked at Rosa with an intensity that made her breath catch. I want some of it to matter. Really matter. To people I know, people whose struggles I understand, because they've let me into their lives. Rosa shifted uncomfortably. Marcus, if you're thinking... Please let me finish, Marcus interrupted, his voice gaining strength despite his physical weakness. I've been thinking about what your mother did for you. She worked herself to death to give Lily opportunities. That's love. That's sacrifice. But what if she hadn't had to? What if she could have lived to see Lily grow up, to meet her grandchildren, to enjoy the life she'd built? Tears were streaming down Rosa's face now. Marcus. I want to set up a trust, Marcus continued, the words tumbling out as if he'd been rehearsing them. For Lily's education. Full ride preschool through PhD if she wants it. The best schools, whatever she needs to become that astronaut princess or anything else she dreams of. And Rosa, I want to make sure you never have to work 3 jobs again. I want you to have time with your daughter, to be there for her bedtime stories and school plays, to not collapse from exhaustion every night." "I can't accept that," Rosa whispered, though her heart was breaking with the beauty of the offer. "It's too much. We barely know you." "You know me better than anyone," Marcus said fiercely. "You've seen me at my worst, dying, broken, pathetic, and you didn't look away. Lily walks into this room every visit like I'm her friend, not a skeleton with a bank account. You've given me something infinitely more valuable than money. You've given me humanity. Please, let me give you something in return. Let me know that I did something that mattered." Lily, who had been listening with the serious expression of a child who understands that something important is happening even if she doesn't grasp all the details, spoke up. "Mommy, if Marcus wants to give us a present, we should say thank you. That's polite." Despite herself, Rosa laughed through her tears. "Yes, mi amor, that's polite." She looked at Marcus, seeing not a billionaire but a friend, someone who had become precious to her in the brief time she'd known him. "Thank you," she said simply. "Thank you for seeing us. Thank you for caring. Thank you for wanting Lily to have what your money can provide. But Marcus, the best gift you've given us is yourself. These moments, these conversations, the way you light up when Lily walks in, that's what we'll treasure. That's what we'll remember." "Then remember this too," Marcus said softly. "Remember that you changed a dying man's last months. You turned my end into something beautiful. That's worth more than any fortune." The conversation marked a turning point. Marcus began actively planning how his wealth could create real, personal impact. He worked with his lawyers to set up not just trusts for Rosa and Lily, but scholarships for immigrant children at Lily's community center, funding for Rosa's church's outreach programs, support for single mothers trying to build better lives for their children. "These are the people who understand struggle," Marcus explained to his bewildered attorney. "These are the communities that know what it means to sacrifice everything for hope. I want my money to honor that." But more than money, Marcus began giving something he'd hoarded his entire life: his time, his attention, his authentic self. He asked Rosa to bring people from her community to meet him. He listened to their stories, learned about their dreams and challenges, and found ways to help that went beyond writing checks. Maria, who cleaned offices at night while studying nursing during the day, found herself with a scholarship. Carlos's mother, who couldn't afford the specialized tutoring her gifted son needed, suddenly had access to the best educational resources in the city. The community center that provided Lily's preschool received funding for a new playground and expanded programming. "You're trying to save the world," Rosa teased one afternoon, but her eyes were proud. "No," Marcus corrected. "I'm trying to impact one small corner of it in a real way. I spent my whole life thinking big, global reach, millions of users, billions of dollars. But I never thought small. I never understood that sometimes the most meaningful change happens in the life of one single mother, one little girl, one struggling student." Lily, who was painting a watercolor picture of Mr. Hoppy at his bedside, looked up. "You're like a superhero," she announced. "But instead of flying, you help people learn and not be so tired." "That's the best kind of superhero," Marcus said, gently touching the curls that had fallen across her face. He'd become increasingly comfortable with small gestures of affection, a hand on Lily's shoulder, a squeeze of Rosa's hand, expressions of care he denied himself for so long. As spring turned to early summer, Marcus's physical decline accelerated. The periods of alertness grew shorter, the pain harder to manage. Patricia increased his medications, her professional cheerfulness tinged with sadness. She'd seen many patients die, but Marcus's transformation from a bitter, isolated man to someone surrounded by love and purpose touched her deeply. "You're remarkable," she told him one morning after Rosa and Lily had left. "Most people don't figure out what matters until it's too late. You still have time to do something with your epiphany." "I have Rosa and Lily to thank for that," Marcus said weakly. "They taught me how to be human again." On a Thursday afternoon, a day Rosa didn't usually visit, Marcus woke from a nap to find Lily sitting quietly in her chair, coloring. Rosa was nowhere to be seen. "Hi, Marcus," Lily said cheerfully, as if finding her at his bedside on an unscheduled day was perfectly normal. "Mommy had to go to an interview for a new job, just one job, and she was nervous about leaving me with the neighbor because the neighbor has too many kids already, and I said I wanted to come see you instead, and she called the building man, and he said okay." Marcus felt a warmth spread through his chest. Rosa had trusted him with her most precious treasure. "I'm glad you're here," he said. "What are you coloring?" "A rainbow," Lily said. "Because you said you liked rainbows because they have all the colors." Had he said that? Marcus couldn't remember, but the fact that Lily remembered touched him deeply. "It's beautiful." They sat in comfortable silence for a while, Lily coloring and occasionally showing Marcus her progress, Marcus watching her with a contentment he'd never imagined possible. "This," he thought. "This is what I was missing. Not the grand achievements, not the public acclaim. Just this, a child's presence, the simple act of being together, of mattering to someone." "Lily," he said softly, "can I tell you something important?" She set down her crayon and gave him her full attention, her dark eyes serious. "Okay. I'm very sick, you know that, right?" "Yes." "You're going to heaven soon, like my abuela." The matter-of-fact way she said it made Marcus smile despite the gravity of the conversation. "Yes, probably soon. And when I do, I want you to know something. Meeting you and your mommy, it's been the best thing that ever happened to me. You made my life better. You made me better." Lily climbed onto the bed and curled up next to him, careful not to jostle him. "You made my life better too. You're my best grown-up friend. And you helped Mommy not be so tired." That made her happy, which made me happy. "I'm glad," Marcus whispered, feeling tears slip down his cheeks. "Lily, I need you to promise me something." "Okay. Promise me you'll keep being exactly who you are. Keep being kind to lonely people. Keep seeing the good in things. Keep believing in astronaut princesses and rabbits with rainbow stickers. The world needs people like you." "I promise," Lily said solemnly, then snuggled closer. "Can I stay until Mommy comes back?" "I'd like that very much." They stayed like that, the dying billionaire and the 3-year-old child, until Rosa returned an hour later to find them both asleep. Lily curled into Marcus's side, Mr. Hoppy clutched in one arm, and Marcus's hand resting gently on her curls, his face peaceful for the first time in months. Rosa stood in the doorway, tears streaming down her face, and understood that she was witnessing something sacred. Two souls who had needed each other, who had found each other against all odds, giving each other the gifts they most needed. Marcus giving them security and hope, Lily and Rosa giving him love and meaning. This was grace, Rosa thought. This was what her mother had meant when she talked about divine appointments, about how God puts people in our paths for reasons we can't always see at first. Marcus had seemed like just another job, another wealthy man in a city full of them. Instead, he'd become family, the family they'd chosen, the family they'd needed. She quietly took a photo with her phone, wanting to preserve this moment forever. Then she settled into a chair to wait, keeping watch over them both, grateful beyond words for the strange and beautiful way their lives had intertwined. The days grew harder after that. Marcus's lucid periods became shorter, the pain more difficult to control. There were mornings when Rosa and Lily would arrive to find him sleeping, too exhausted to wake properly. But even unconscious, his face seemed more peaceful than it had been before they'd entered his life, as if some deep anxiety had finally been soothed. On the mornings when Marcus was awake, he made every moment count. He'd asked Rosa to bring a video camera, and together they recorded messages for Lily, advice for her future self, stories about his own life's mistakes and lessons, encouragement for her dreams. Some recordings were silly, like the one where he and Lily had a serious discussion about whether unicorns or dragons made better pets. Others were profound. Marcus talking about what he'd learned about love and connection, about the difference between success and significance, about how the smallest acts of kindness could change someone's entire world. When you're older, Marcus told the camera, with Lily sitting beside him holding Mr. Hoppy up to watch, and you face hard choices, remember this. The most important things in life can't be bought, but they can be given.
Love, time,
attention, presence. These are the currencies that matter. I learned that too late, but you don't have to. Start young. Choose people over possessions. Choose presence over productivity. Choose love over everything else. He established a foundation, managed by Rosa, with the support of his former board members, dedicated to helping immigrant families achieve stability and education. The Lily Rosa Foundation, he named it after the two people who'd taught him what truly mattered. "You can't name it after us," Rosa protested when the lawyers presented the paperwork. "People will think we took advantage of you." "Let them think what they want," Marcus said with a trace of his old fire. "I know the truth. You gave me more than I could ever give you. Besides, every time someone says that name, they'll have to acknowledge that a struggling single mother and her 3-year-old daughter had more wisdom than a billionaire. That's a legacy worth leaving." One of Marcus's former business partners, Daniel, came to visit after hearing about the foundation. He was shocked by Marcus's appearance, but even more shocked by the transformation in his spirit. "You seem happy," Daniel said, bewildered. "I don't understand. You're dying, and you're giving away your fortune, and you seem genuinely happy." Marcus smiled weakly. "I'm dying rich, Daniel. Not in money. I always had that. But in the things that actually make life worth living. Can you say the same?" Daniel left looking shaken, but he made a substantial donation to the foundation on his way out, and Marcus later heard he'd started volunteering at a homeless shelter. Small ripples, Marcus thought. That's how change really happens. Patricia, the hospice nurse, marveled at what she called the Lily effect. "I've been doing this for 20 years, she told Rosa one afternoon while Marcus slept, "and I've never seen anything like this." Terminally ill patients often slip into depression, especially those without family. They give up, turn inward. But Marcus has been fighting to stay present. He manages his pain better because he wants to be alert for your visits. He eats more because he wants the energy to engage with Lily. That little girl has given him a reason to keep living, even as he's dying. "She's special," Rosa agreed, watching her daughter carefully arrange her stuffed animals around Marcus's bed, a protective circle of fuzzy guardians. "She doesn't understand death the way adults do. She just knows that Marcus is her friend, and friends take care of each other." "Maybe that's exactly the kind of understanding that's needed," Patricia said softly. As July approached, Marcus's condition deteriorated rapidly. The doctors gave him weeks, maybe days. He had moments of clarity interspersed with increasing periods of confusion and sleep. But even in his confusion, he would reach for Lily's hand if she was there or call out for Rosa, anchoring himself to the connections he'd finally learned to value. On a humid Thursday afternoon, Marcus woke with unusual clarity. He immediately asked the nurse to call Rosa, to bring Lily, if possible. "I need to see them," he insisted with such urgency that the nurse complied immediately. Rosa arrived within an hour, Lily in tow, both of them sensing that something was different. Marcus was propped up in bed, clearly in pain but fighting to stay present. "I'm glad you came," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "I have something to tell you. Something important." Lily climbed onto her chair and took his hand. "I'm listening." Marcus smiled at her. This child who had taught him so much in such a short time. "Lily, do you know what the best day of my life was?" She shook her head, curls bouncing. "The day you walked into my room with Mr. Hoppy and decided I needed a friend. Before that day, I had everything money could buy, but I had nothing that mattered. After that day, I had you and your mommy, and I finally understood what being rich really meant." "It means having people who love you," Lily said, as if this was obvious. "Exactly," Marcus agreed. "And I want you to know, both of you, that I love you. I've never said that to anyone before, not really. I said it to women I dated, but I didn't mean it. I told my parents I loved them, because that's what you're supposed to say. But I mean it now. I love you. You saved me." Rosa was crying openly now, holding her daughter close. "We love you too, Marcus. Your family." "Family," Marcus repeated, the word tasting sweet. "I like that. I've never had a real family before." He paused, gathering his strength. "Rosa, I need you to promise me something. Anything. Promise me you'll tell Lily about me. Not the billionaire part, not the business success. Tell her about the man who learned how to love at the very end. Tell her about how it's never too late to change, to become who you were meant to be. Tell her that the last months of my life were the best months of my life, because they were real." "I promise," Rosa whispered. "I'll tell her every day if I need to. And Lily," Marcus turned his fading attention to the little girl, "I want you to have something." He nodded to the nurse, who handed him a small box. With shaking hands, Marcus opened it to reveal a delicate gold necklace with a butterfly pendant, its wings inlaid with subtle diamonds that caught the light. "Butterflies are special," Marcus explained to Lily. "They start as caterpillars, closed in darkness. But then they transform, and they become something beautiful that can fly. You did that for me, Lily. You helped me transform. You gave me wings when I thought I could only crawl. I want you to wear this and remember that you have the power to help people transform. You did it for me. You'll do it for others. It's your gift." Lily took the necklace with reverent care, her small fingers tracing the butterfly's wings. "It's beautiful. Like the dress you're going to get me for my birthday." Marcus laughed weakly. "Better than the dress. The dress is in my closet, by the way, Rosa. The nurse knows where. It has real butterflies embroidered on it. I wanted Lily to have something special for me for her 4th birthday, even if I'm not here to see it." Fresh tears spilled down Rosa's cheeks. "You've already given us so much." "Not enough," Marcus said. "I can never give enough to repay what you've given me. But I've tried. The foundation will help families like yours. The trusts will give Lily opportunities. The scholarships will help other children dream bigger. And these," he gestured weakly to the videos they'd recorded, "these will let Lily know me, even when I'm gone. These are the only things I've ever built that will truly last, because they're built on love." They stayed with him for hours that afternoon, Lily coloring quietly, sometimes showing Marcus her pictures, sometimes just sitting close. Rosa held his hand, told him stories about her childhood in Honduras, about her mother, about the future she dreamed for Lily. Marcus listened, occasionally asking questions, storing every detail as if he could take these memories with him. As evening approached and Lily began to tire, Rosa knew they needed to leave. She gathered their things, but before she could pick up Lily, the little girl climbed onto Marcus's bed one last time. "Marcus," she whispered. "Yes, sweetheart. When you get to heaven, can you tell my abuela thank you? Thank you for teaching Mommy to help lonely people. Because if she didn't teach Mommy that, we wouldn't have met you, and you're one of my favorite people in the whole world." Marcus pulled the child close, ignoring the pain it caused, and pressed a kiss to the top of her curly head. "I'll tell her," he promised. "And I'll tell her she did a wonderful job raising your mommy, and that your mommy is doing a wonderful job raising you. You're going to do amazing things, Lily Rosa Martinez. You're going to change the world, one lonely person at a time." "Okay," Lily agreed simply, as if world-changing was just another item on her to-do list. She kissed his cheek, the gesture so tender and pure that Marcus felt his heart might burst. "Goodbye, Marcus. I'll see you on Monday." But they both knew she wouldn't. Not in this life, anyway. "Goodbye, little butterfly," Marcus whispered. "Thank you for helping me fly." After they left, Marcus lay in the gathering darkness, the sound of Lily's laughter still echoing in his ears. For the first time since his diagnosis, he wasn't afraid. He'd found meaning at the end. He'd learned to love. He'd made connections that would outlast his life. He'd transformed from a caterpillar into something that could fly. He'd died rich after all, just not in the way anyone expected. Marcus Ashford died peacefully in his sleep 2 days later, on a Saturday morning while sunrise painted his penthouse windows gold. Patricia found him with a slight smile on his face, his hand resting on a photograph Rosa had left him, a picture of her and Lily, all three of them together, taken on one of Marcus's better days. In the photo, Lily was showing him her completed coloring book, Rosa was laughing at something he'd said, and Marcus looked truly happy for perhaps the first time in his adult life. Rosa heard the news from the building's concierge, who called her with sympathy in his voice. She'd known it was coming, had felt it in Marcus's goodbye, but knowing didn't make the grief any lighter. She sat down on her apartment's worn couch and wept, for the man who'd become her friend, for the father figure Lily had found in him, for the tragic waste of all the years Marcus had spent alone. But she also wept with gratitude. In his final months, Marcus had truly lived. He'd learned to love, to connect, to use his resources not as a barrier against humanity, but as a bridge to it. He'd died with people who cared about him, who would remember him not for his billions, but for his transformation. Lily found her crying and climbed into her lap, Mr. Hoppy tucked under one arm. "Is Marcus in heaven now?" she asked. "Yes, mi amor," Rosa managed. "He's with the angels now." "And with my abuela?" "Yes, with your abuela." Lily was quiet for a moment, then said, "That's good. He won't be lonely there. Abuela will take care of him." She touched the butterfly necklace she was wearing. She'd insisted on putting it on immediately and hadn't taken it off since. "Mommy," Marcus said, "I helped him transform." "What does that mean?" Rosa pulled her daughter close, breathing in the scent of her strawberry shampoo, gathering her thoughts. "It means you helped him become who he was always meant to be. You showed him how to love, how to be kind, how to care about people. You gave him a gift, the gift of seeing him as a person, not just a rich man. You were his friend when he needed one most." "I'll miss him," Lily said, her voice small. "Me too, baby. Me too." The funeral was held at a small chapel that Rosa's church community used, not at the grand cathedral Marcus's lawyers had suggested. Rosa had been left in charge of the arrangements, a responsibility that had shocked Marcus's business associates, but one that made perfect sense to anyone who'd seen them together in his final months. The service was intimate, attended by Rosa and her community, Patricia and the other nurses who'd cared for Marcus, a handful of his former colleagues who'd been genuinely moved by his transformation, and Daniel, his former business partner, who spoke about how Marcus had inspired him to reconsider his own priorities. But the most powerful moment came when Rosa stood to speak, Lily beside her in a new black dress, not the butterfly dress, which Rosa was saving for happier occasions, holding Mr. Hoppy. "Most of you knew Marcus Ashford the businessman," Rosa began, her voice steady despite her tears. "You knew his achievements, his intelligence, his drive. But I knew a different Marcus. I knew the Marcus who learned to love at the very end, who discovered that wealth isn't measured in dollars, but in connections, who found family in unexpected places." She told him about that first day, about Lily walking into Marcus's room and deciding he needed a friend. She spoke about the transformation she'd witnessed, about a man who'd spent his life building walls finally learning to build bridges. She talked about the videos Marcus had recorded for Lily, about the foundation he'd established, about the lives he'd touched in his final months, not through money, though that helped, but through genuine care and attention. "Marcus told me once that he'd wasted most of his life," Rosa said. "But I don't believe that. I believe every moment of his life led him to the place where he could finally become who he was meant to be. And in those final months, he lived more fully, more authentically, more lovingly than many people do in a lifetime. He taught us that it's never too late to change, never too late to love, never too late to matter." When she finished, Lily stood on her chair, a gesture that made several people in the audience smile through their tears, remembering how she'd sit on that same kind of chair by Marcus's bed. "Marcus was my friend," she announced in her small, clear voice. "He was sad and lonely, but then he got happy because we loved him and he loved us. He told me I'm going to change the world. I'm going to do that. I'm going to help lonely people, just like I helped him. And when I do something really good, I'll remember it's because Marcus believed in me." There wasn't a dry eye in the chapel. The reading of the will took place a week later in the office of Marcus's attorney, a dignified older man named Gerald Stevens who'd watched his client's transformation with wonder. The gathering was small. Rosa and her lawyer, Marcus, had insisted she have representation. Daniel, Patricia, and several representatives from the charities Marcus had designated. The numbers were staggering. The foundation, the Lily Rosa Foundation, had been endowed with $500 million. An additional $200 million had been set aside in a trust for Rosa, structured to provide her with a comfortable income while preserving the principal for Lily's eventual inheritance. Lily's education trust held another $100 million. That's. Rosa couldn't speak. The numbers were too large to comprehend. "That's approximately 1/3 of Mr. Ashford's liquid assets," Gerald explained. "The remaining 2/3 have been divided among various charities as specified in his will, with the exception of $50 million dedicated to scholarships for immigrant families and another $50 million to support programs for terminal patients seeking to find meaning and connection at the end of life, inspired by his own experience." But Gerald wasn't finished. He pulled out a sealed envelope. "This is to be read aloud, per Mr. Ashford's specific instructions." He opened it and began to read in Marcus's words. "To Rosa and Lily, my family, my teachers, my transformation. By the time you hear this, I'll be gone. I hope I went peacefully, and I hope Lily wasn't too sad. I hope Rosa remembers that I went grateful, not afraid, because of what you both gave me. I know the amounts in this will are shocking. I know Rosa will worry that it's too much, that people will judge, that it will change her. Don't worry. Money is just a tool. What matters is what you do with it. Rosa, I've watched you work 3 jobs to give your daughter opportunities. Now you don't have to. You can be there for her bedtimes, her school plays, her triumphs and struggles. You can build the life your mother dreamed for you. That's all I want, for you to have time. Time is the only thing I ran out of, and it's more precious than any fortune. Lily, by the time you're old enough to really understand this letter, I hope your mother has told you stories about me. Not about my money or my business, but about the lonely man who learned to love because of a little girl with butterflies on her dress and kindness in her heart. I hope you become that astronaut princess, or a doctor, or a teacher, or whatever calls to your beautiful spirit. And I hope, whatever you become, you remember to see people. Really see them. That's your superpower. The foundation is my real legacy. Not the company I built. That will be forgotten in a generation or two. But the families we help, the opportunities we create, the loneliness we alleviate, that will ripple forward in ways we can't imagine. Every person we help will help others. Every child we educate will teach others. Every family we stabilize will strengthen their community. You taught me that significance isn't about how many people know your name. It's about how deeply you touch the lives you can reach. I touched billions through my company, but connected with none of them. In my final months, I connected with dozens, maybe hundreds if we count everyone in Rose's community, and those connections transformed me. That's the legacy I want. Not Marcus Ashford, billionaire, but Marcus Ashford, friend. Marcus Ashford, who learned to love. Marcus Ashford, who was saved by a 3-year-old girl and her selfless mother. Thank you. Thank you for seeing me when I was invisible. Thank you for loving me when I was unlovable. Thank you for teaching me, at the very end, what being alive really means. With all my love, Marcus. Rosa was openly sobbing by the time Gerald finished reading. Several others in the room were crying too. Even Gerald had to pause to collect himself before continuing with the remaining legal details. In the months that followed, Rosa gradually adjusted to her new reality. She quit her exhausting jobs and devoted herself to managing the foundation, discovering that she had a gift for understanding what people really needed, not just money, but support, connection, and opportunity. The foundation flourished under her care, helping hundreds of families each year. She moved into a modest house in Queens with a backyard where Lily could play. Not a penthouse. Rosa had no desire for that kind of isolation, but a real home in a real neighborhood where she knew her neighbors and Lily could play with other children. Lily thrived. She attended an excellent private school that challenged and nurtured her curious mind. She made friends, joined clubs, discovered a love for science and art. But she never forgot Marcus. His videos, which Rosa played for her regularly, became touchstones in her life. Advice she'd return to when facing challenges, wisdom she'd apply to her decisions. On what would have been Marcus's 34th birthday, Rosa and Lily started a tradition. They would visit his grave, a simple headstone in a cemetery overlooking the water, inscribed with the words, "He learned to love," and tell him about their year. Lily would bring flowers and a new drawing to leave at his grave. "Hi, Marcus," Lily said on that first visit, placing a crayon drawing of a butterfly on his headstone. "I'm in kindergarten now. I can read chapter books. I have a best friend named Emma, and Mommy doesn't look so tired anymore. That's because of you." As the years passed, Lily grew. She remained the kind, observant child she'd always been, but she also developed a fierce drive to make a difference, inspired by Marcus's transformation and her mother's example. She volunteered at homeless shelters, tutored immigrant children, raised money for medical research. When she was 16, she gave a TEDx talk about the power of seeing people, about how her friendship with a dying billionaire had taught her that everyone, regardless of their circumstances, needs to be truly seen and valued. The talk went viral, reaching millions. In it, she wore the butterfly necklace and spoke about transformation, about how we can all help each other become who we're meant to be. "Marcus taught me that it's never too late to change," she told the audience. "He also taught me that it's never too early to start making a difference. We don't have to wait until we're powerful or rich or successful to touch lives. Sometimes all we need to do is walk into a room and decide that someone needs a friend. The foundation grew along with Lily. What had started as a trust fund became a movement, helping thousands of families, funding hundreds of scholarships, creating community centers and programs across the country. Every recipient learned Marcus's story, not to glorify him, but to illustrate the power of transformation and connection. Rosa, now in her 40s and having never remarried, though she dated occasionally, often reflected on that strange season when a billionaire and a maid's daughter had found each other. She'd been so worried about losing her cleaning job that day when Lily had wandered into Marcus's room. She'd never imagined that her daughter's simple act of kindness would change all of their lives so completely. "Do you think he's proud of us?" Lily asked one evening when she was 17, working on college applications. She'd been accepted early decision to MIT. She'd decided to become a biomedical engineer, hoping to develop better treatments for diseases like the one that had killed Marcus. "I think he's watching from wherever he is, beaming with pride," Rosa said, pulling her daughter close. "You've become exactly who he knew you could be." "We both have," Lily corrected. "You too, Mommy. You've helped so many families. You've changed so many lives. You've built something that will outlast all of us." Rosa smiled, thinking of Marcus's words about legacy. "We built it together. You, me, and Marcus. Three unlikely people who needed each other at exactly the right time." On the 10-year anniversary of Marcus's death, the foundation held a major gala. Lily, now a college graduate and in her first year of graduate school, was the keynote speaker. She stood before an audience of donors, recipients, and supporters, wearing a formal gown and the butterfly necklace that had become her trademark. 10 years ago, she began, a little girl walked into a dying man's bedroom and changed both of their lives forever. I was that little girl. I don't remember making a conscious decision to befriend Marcus Ashford. I just saw someone who was lonely and sick, and my abuela, my grandmother, had taught my mother, and my mother taught me that when you see someone suffering, you sit with them. You don't fix them or pity them or fear them. You just be present. She talked about the lessons Marcus had taught her through his transformation, about humility, about the difference between wealth and richness, about the power of authentic connection. She spoke about her mother's strength and sacrifice, about how Rosa had modeled what it means to serve others with dignity and love. "The Lily Rosa Foundation isn't really named after me," Lily continued. "It's named after what my mother and I represented to Marcus. It's named after the possibility of transformation, after the hope that connection can heal, after the belief that we're all responsible for each other's well-being. Every life we touch, every family we help, every child we educate, that's Marcus learning to love, over and over again, rippling forward through time." By the end of her speech, there wasn't a dry eye in the room. The foundation raised $15 million that night, money that would change hundreds of lives, create thousands of opportunities, touch countless hearts. Later, Rosa and Lily stood together on the gala venue's balcony, looking out at the city lights. Somewhere out there was the penthouse where it had all begun, where a lonely billionaire had waited to die until a toddler with a stuffed rabbit had decided he needed a friend. "Do you think life would have been easier if we'd never met him?" Lily asked. "No pressure to live up to his belief in us. No responsibility of managing so much money. No public scrutiny?" Rosa considered the question carefully. "Easier? Maybe. Better? Never. Marcus gave us resources, yes. But more than that, he gave us purpose. He showed us what's possible when we choose to see people, when we choose to love even when it's inconvenient or uncomfortable. He transformed our lives by letting us transform his. And now we get to help other people transform," Lily added. "Exactly. That's the real gift, not the money, but the mission. Not the wealth, but the wisdom. Not the resources, but the responsibility to use them well. They stood in silence for a moment, each lost in their own memories of the man who'd changed everything. Lily touched her butterfly necklace, feeling Marcus's presence in that familiar weight against her chest. "Thank you, Marcus," she whispered to the night sky, "for seeing us, for loving us, for teaching us what really matters. We're doing our best to honor your legacy." A breeze stirred the air, carrying with it the scent of the flowering trees in the venue's garden. If you believed in signs, and both Rosa and Lily did, it felt like an answer, like Marcus sending his love from wherever he'd gone. They'd all transformed each other, in the end. A dying billionaire had found meaning and love. A struggling single mother had found security and purpose. A 3-year-old girl had found a friend and a calling. And out of that unlikely meeting, something beautiful had been born, a legacy not of money, but of connection. Not of power, but of love. Not of isolation, but of community. Marcus had been right. The last months of his life had been his best, because they were real. And the best part was that those months hadn't ended with his death. They'd multiplied, rippled forward, touched thousands of lives, and would touch thousands more. He'd died rich after all, in love, in meaning, and impact. And that kind of wealth never ran out. It just kept growing, kept spreading, kept transforming hearts one connection at a time. In the end, that was the real story. Not of a dying billionaire and a maid's toddler, but of what happens when we let each other in. When we choose presence over isolation. When we choose to see and be seen. When we choose love. That was Marcus's true fortune, and it was one that would never be spent, only shared, multiplied, and passed on to generations who would never know his name, but would feel the warmth of his transformation in the opportunities they received, the kindness they encountered, the belief that someone, somewhere, thought they mattered. Because of a little girl with butterflies on her dress who walked into a room and decided a lonely man needed a friend. Because love, in the end, is always the answer. The Lily Rosa Foundation continues its work today, having helped over 50,000 families and funded education for more than 10,000 students. Every recipient learns Marcus's story, and every life touched becomes part of his living legacy, a reminder that it's never too late to transform, never too late to love, and never too late to matter.